This season, we're tracing the story of the sounds of life on our planet, starting way back in time with microbes, quietly burbling away, slowly pumping oxygen into our oceans and atmosphere for a couple of billion years. Until, finally, complex life began to emerge. Soft, sensitive little corals, surprisingly chatty fish, marine arthropods, and their intrepid land-exploring brethren, and all manner of plants evolving in collaboration with animals, listening and even talking in their ways. Throughout all of these changes, the continents were drifting around, merging and breaking up until they smashed together into one big glob, the supercontinent of Pangaea. If we could listen to an audio postcard from Pangaea some 252 million years ago, we would hear the voices of reptiles, amphibians, and our very distant proto-mammal ancestors as they grew large and likely quite loud. And then we would hear it all go silent. It was the Permian extinction, the deadliest event our planet has ever known. It's called the Great Dying, and it was caused by runaway heating. Giant cracks formed in Pangaea's crust and filled with rivers of boiling lava. Massive amounts of carbon dioxide pulsed into the atmosphere, triggering spikes of planetary fever that robbed the ocean of oxygen. Fish and corals were left gasping for breath. Almost nothing in the sea survived. Terrestrial plants and animals did a little better, but in just 60,000 years, around 90% of all species on Earth were wiped out. Pangaea was nearly empty and very, very quiet. Dramatically warming the planet was catastrophic. And yes, that should freak us out. But life is determined. It took hundreds of thousands of years, but slowly the Earth began again. Ginkgos and many conifer trees made it through and went on to flourish. New species of amphibians emerged, and one group of reptiles evolved into fearsome beasts that came to dominate the terrestrial realm. Dinosaurs emerged and took center stage, owning the role of the big and the scary, while our ancient mammalian ancestors scuttled into the shadows and perfected the arts of the small and the stealthy. Some became nocturnal, others sheltered underground or built homes high up in the trees. And they became excellent listeners. This was when mammalian ears and jawbones rearranged themselves into the highly sensitive eardrums with 3 tiny little mallets that we still have today. This keen hearing helped them to stay alert to the many threats that surrounded them, but it also helped them tune in to each other. Because some mammals survived the age of the dinosaurs by living in cooperative groups, an incredibly powerful adaptation with listening at its core. Welcome to Threshold, I'm Amy Martin, and after 7 episodes and several billion years of Earth history, we're finally ready to meet our first terrestrial mammal. It's an odd little creature, a rodent that lives underground in a big community burrow. But like many mammals, including us humans, its survival depends on building stable, mutually supportive groups, societies that can only work when members are listening to each other. I'm following Dr. Alison Barker through the hallways of the Max Planck Institute for Brain Research in Frankfurt, Germany. She unlocks the door to a small, darkened room and hands me a lab coat, hairnet, and face mask to put on. There are some mysterious tubes and wires and lots of other sciencey stuff around. And then there are these two big containers that look almost like incubators. And here's the mole rats! Oh my gosh, somebody's like snoozing here.
Yeah, I think it's nap time, so they have not yet been fed.
Allison and I are standing over a colony of naked mole rats, small burrowing rodents that live in East Africa. I just have to get down here and look at these. They're like mouse size, but their little snouts they look like little mini pigs with long teeth attached to mouse bodies. Except they don't look much like pigs, other than in the snout, and they lack the big round ears of mice. Honestly, I'm avoiding saying what they really look like. The best description I've heard came from the fabulous Australian journalist Anne Jones, who called them tallywhackers with teeth.
You know, when you first look at them, yeah, they may not be the cutest, and they may not, they may not have a lot of things going for them, but they really just have a lot of pep, I think, a lot of personality.
Naked mole rats are not moles or rats. They're more closely related to guinea pigs and porcupines. They have around 100 highly sensitive hairs on their finger-sized bodies, but other than that, they are mostly naked. And they are very good singers. I'm just sticking the microphone down into their little tunnel network. They're like talking nonstop.
Yeah, exactly. I wish I knew what they were saying.
Allison leads a team of researchers here who are working on figuring that out. They've installed an array of microphones so they can record naked mole rat conversation 24/7. In other words, this burrow is bugged.
They kind of self-designate chambers for different activities. So here, this kind of messed up area is where we usually feed them, and so they keep that as the dining room or the food chamber. And they generally like to sleep together in one giant pile, and so they'll have a sleeping chamber. And they have one chamber which actually is pretty clean today, but in the back there, this is the toilet chamber, and so they all go to the bathroom or urinate, defecate in the same chamber.
There are currently 8 separate colonies here, each with their own Lord of the Rings themed name. And watching the 18 members of Colony Baggins, I see what Allison means about the pep. Almost all of them are in nearly constant motion, busily scurrying about in their labyrinth of plastic tunnels. Back in this back chamber, there's paper all wadded up. Do they like to play in that?
Yeah, so you have found the Schlafzimmer, or the sleeping chamber. So we give them fresh paper towels every day, and they like to rip them up and kind of move them around. And generally they move a lot of them into the sleeping chamber. Since in the wild they have dirt to dig through, we try and give them, something new to dig through every day to kind of give them something to organize and keep them active.
Scientists don't know for sure when mammals first started living in underground groups like this, but it appears to be a very old behavior. At one site in Montana, researchers found several skeletons of little chipmunk-like things nestling together in a burrow beneath a dinosaur nesting area. And it's highly likely that those little creatures were chattering with each other about where to find food or calling out warnings when they heard hungry dinosaurs on the move topside. Naked mole rats emerged long after the dinosaurs were gone, but watching them move about their burrow, it's easy to imagine how group living and acoustic communication evolved together in mammals.
When they approach each other in these tunnels, you can see they kind of nuzzle each other, and then the more dominant individual will climb over the subordinate one.
Okay.
And so if you watch it long enough, you can usually identify the queen because she will be the one climbing over everybody else.
The queen, her naked mole rat highness, is the all-powerful ruler here. These animals organize themselves kind of like bees or ants do, with a queen at the center and every other member of the colony fulfilling a specific role, like foraging for food, caring for the pups, or fighting off intruders. The queen chooses a few males to be her consorts, and she's the only one who gives birth. It's called a eusocial system, and naked mole rats and their close cousins are the only mammals known to live this way.
And we're trying to understand how the colony dynamics occur naturally. So who's interacting with who? We're really interested in how the queen shapes the dynamics of the colony. So is she the first one to get food? Does she hang out more with the breeding males? Do the workers hang out with each other?
And one of the primary tools they use to negotiate all of these relationships is sound. Oh, and Allison just pulled one out. Oh, wow. Hi.
You can hear a few soft chirps.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I'm not going to lie, this little creature has a face made for radio. But that voice, there's a real sweetness to it. I have to say, it seems like you have a tenderness for them.
Oh, well.
Does it feel that way? Like,
yeah, I would say I have a genuine affection for these animals. I think it's really hard not to when you meet them. They're very gentle. I mean, everyone in the lab takes turns, like feeding them on the weekends, and I also take a turn. I like to come in on the weekends sometimes and just, see what they're up to, give them some sweet potatoes. It's really very relaxing for me.
Yeah. Allison tucks the naked mole rats back in, and we head to her office to continue our conversation. She tells me her first encounter with naked mole rats was in Berlin when she was interviewing for a research position. The scientist she was meeting with took her down to the basement of his building and introduced her to his naked mole rat colony.
And when I saw them, I basically just fell in love. I know a lot of people, I mean, for me, it wasn't really love at first sight, although that's not to say that I don't think they're very adorable. It was more love at first sound.
Someone happened to be feeding them right when she visited, so their enclosure was open.
And you could hear them chirping, and they really sounded like birds. There was a brief moment of sensory disconnect where you hear a sound and you think it should be coming from something else based on your whole life experience, and then you realize it's coming from this unusual looking creature that you've never seen before. I think it was just a complete surprise. It was a real moment of wonderment, which become increasingly rare, I think, in your adult life, and especially when you're on job interviews.
This might be the point at which you're wondering, why did a scientist in Berlin have a colony of naked mole rats in his basement in the first place? Well, in addition to their unique eusocial system, these little creatures have a surprising collection of superpowers of scientific interest. They rarely develop cancer. They have a very high tolerance for pain and low oxygen environments. And they can live for 30 years, or even longer sometimes. They are the longest-lived rodents in the world. Even more interesting, they usually stay very healthy well into old age, and the queen doesn't appear to go through menopause. There are actually way too many extraordinary facts about naked mole rats to list here, but I can't resist throwing in just one more. They can move their giant front teeth independently. And with party tricks like that, maybe it's not all that surprising that the sonic world of naked mole rats hadn't attracted much attention until Allison came along.
When you think of all these cool things, many which have really clear clinical applications, most people would just say, and they seem to make a lot of noises, but, we're focusing on all these other cool things.
But as a neuroscientist with a special interest in vocal communication and how it relates to cooperation, the sounds of the naked mole rats were a siren song. Here was a long-lived species that was highly social, cooperative, and vocal.
If you watch them for a while, you see that they're constantly interacting with each other. And just the fact that they were vocalizing so much, both my brain and my heart were kind of screaming together, like, you have to study this.
Living together in mutually supportive groups is a survival strategy that's evolved again and again. And sound is frequently a big part of making that work, especially among mammals. Dolphins, elephants, bats, and many other species, including us humans, of course, are all highly social animals that communicate a lot through sound. And although we've added all sorts of elaborate layers to that process, it likely all started with the same core need: to cooperate. Telling each other where to find food, or that there's a snake hiding in the grass somewhere. Listening to each other is a huge evolutionary advantage.
So very basic, very essential things that are necessary to survive in many cases. They're enhanced when you have more information, when you can share information with a group.
In the early 1990s, some researchers had started to make the first naked mole rat dictionary based on observations in the field. They identified 17 different sounds and gave them evocative names like the scream, the hiss, and the toilet call.
So we used that as a basis, and we started listening to the mole rats.
Listening and recording. Allison and her team have captured thousands of hours of sounds, and they've now expanded the naked mole rat dictionary to more than 25 sound types. Some of them, like that toilet call, are used only by the queen and her consorts. Allison says they make this sound when they urinate. Why they do this is one of the many mysteries of mole rat communication. The sound that Allison has researched the most is called the soft chirp. All naked mole rats use it a lot. The majority of the sounds I heard when I was observing the colony earlier were soft chirps. Allison believes these sounds communicate something about individual identity and group membership. But she also says there's a lot we don't know. The sounds could have something akin to emotional information baked into them, or location, like, I was just here and I'm on my way over there. We also don't really know how the naked mole rats are using these sounds to transmit information. It could be something about the pitch or the volume or even the rhythm, the spaces between chirps.
Something as simple as the Morse code, which is a series of dots and long pulses, can give you a ton of information. And, also binary code is just, ones and zeros, and that can encode tons of information if you have the right decoder on the other end.
But the only way to fully decode the soft chirp or any other naked mole rat sounds is to pair them with behaviors. And several years ago, Allison ended up witnessing behaviors she never wanted to see, but which ended up leading to one of her most important discoveries. We'll have more after this short break.
All organisms, to some degree, are intelligent problem solvers. It's just they've evolved to solve different kinds of problems.
And whole ecosystems of working together, that's an intelligent social phenomenon.
For all the talk about the age of information, we're really entering the age of nature. Nature's Genius is a new podcast series from the Bioneers. It explores how the solutions we need are present in the sentient symphony of life. Starting February 18th, wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to Threshold. I'm Amy Martin, and Dr. Allison Barker is telling me about one of the worst things she ever witnessed in naked mole rat society. It was Christmas. Most people were on break, and Allison went in to take care of the colony. But instead of happy little rodents nibbling on sweet potatoes, she found blood.
We saw in one colony the loss of a queen from a coup. So there was another female that rose up in collaboration with some males in the colony, and they attacked the queen and disposed her.
Killed her?
Yeah, killed her. It was quite... I had volunteered that year to stay over the Christmas holidays and take care of the animals, and so, I went in, and then I kind of witnessed part of this happening, and it was very traumatic for me because I was so attached to these animals. But of course, this is a natural part of their behavior, and so I just kind of had to observe.
Regicide. The queen was murdered. soon another queen was installed. But then it happened again. Another bloody coup, and another queen rose to power. It was a shocking amount of regime change over a very short period of time.
A queen can be stable for decades. I mean, if she's a good queen, and ideally that's what you would like for the health of the colony.
So this was not a situation that Allison would ever have instigated or wished for, but she kept the recorders rolling. And when it was all over, she realized she had some remarkable data, many hours of recordings of naked mole rat communication in two very different states of being. There was a period of stability with a monarch in full control, and then a period of chaos, confusion, and conflict, and then another round of both.
So Queen Period 1, Queen Period 2, Anarchy 1, Anarchy 2.
And that made it possible to ask a new question. How or if the communication in the colony changed when a queen was deposed. To most human ears, there was no obvious difference, but Allison trained a computer to sort through the sounds, and soon something fascinating began to emerge. When the monarchy was stable,
everyone was basically sounding the same or very similar.
But when the queen was gone,
individuals would change their vocalizations in different ways. And so we realized when the queen is there, every individual is shaping their soft chirp so that it sounds very similar. The presence of the queen adds this cohesion to the colony.
So part of what makes a naked mole rat colony work, what makes it possible for them to cooperate well, is listening to each other. Taking cues from the queen, they unify their communication. And this seems to help them understand themselves to be a consolidated group with shared goals.
Each colony has their own specific dialect that they use, and when the queen disappears, this dialect falls apart and the whole colony structure becomes disorganized.
As the communication among the naked mole rats begins to fall apart, other aspects of their society disintegrate too.
We do find that these queenless colonies tend to get a bit fatter, and they tend to be a bit messier, and you see very clearly like the distinction of a well-kept colony where all the burrows are clean, all the food is distributed.
So what's going on here? Is this a story of a unifying leader, a queen who inspires all the mole rats to get along and clean their rooms and harmonize their communication? Or is it that she's more of a tyrant who tightly restricts the colony, even going so far as to censor their speech to bring them all in line?
Yeah, there's a lot of debate about whether the queen is a benevolent figure or someone who's, sort of ruling with an iron fist, let's say.
Allison says we need a lot more information before we can answer these kinds of questions. And most likely, we're not going to be able to pigeonhole the queen so neatly into one box or another. Naked mole rats may not be large, but they do contain multitudes. And they seem to think as a multitude as well.
Every member of the society seems to have an awareness of one another, and they really work together to accomplish what they need to accomplish.
Could they be as cooperative if they didn't have the vocal communication?
I'll take a strong position on this, and I think no. The cooperation that has evolved in these animals has evolved hand in hand with their ability to communicate.
In order to cooperate, you need to know who you're cooperating with and what your role is, who's in the group and how you fit into it. So when a naked mole rat queen is deposed and a unified dialect starts to fall away, it's a big deal. Are they losing their ability to understand each other? Or is it more like everybody's trying to assert, do my dialect, no, do my dialect?
Well, I think maybe those things go hand in hand. I mean, if you're actively trying to promote your own agenda, you're not listening.
Finding the balance between talking and listening, navigating the tensions between social harmony and freedom of expression. We tend to think of these as very human conundrums, but here they are, alive and well in naked mole rat society too.
Many species, including humans, we've been given a set of environmental conditions, and we've needed to find ways to be successful with those conditions. And I think for humans, language and cooperation are some of the features that really helped move us forward and helps us be successful. And I think there is some value in kind of understanding different mechanisms that evolved.
It's probably unwise to look to tallywhackers with teeth for solutions to our human problems, but maybe they can help us understand them a little better. Our increasingly fragmented public discourse, the outrage and vitriol we post on social media, the dysfunction in our democratic institutions, our modern dramas have very ancient roots. We are social animals whose fates are linked together, and that means we have to figure out how to communicate and cooperate. We don't have a choice. Just like for these weird little rodents, our survival depends on it. Before we end this episode, I want to give a shout out to another group of animals that survived the Permian extinction, or even better, let them shout for themselves. Along with some reptiles and mammals, amphibians made it through that bottleneck and went on to thrive. And sound has always been a huge part of their lives. But frogs, toads, and other amphibians are in serious trouble. 40% of species worldwide are threatened with extinction right now. Later this season, we're going to learn more about this and celebrate our amphibian friends, but we need your help. We're hoping to feature the voices of amphibians from every continent where they live, which is all of the continents, except Antarctica. Depending on where you live, there could be some amphibians calling in your world right now. So here's what we're asking for. We want you to go out, listen for frogs and toads, and record them. Just find someone croaking and hit record on your phone. It doesn't matter if there's background noise. It doesn't even matter if you're not sure whether or not you're hearing an amphibian. If you think you are, we would love to get a recording from you. Please also say your name and where you are in the world, and then email the recording to us at outreach@thresholdpodcast.org. Again, that's outreach@thresholdpodcast.org. Operation Frog Sound, engage. This episode of Threshold was written, reported, and produced by me, Amy Martin, with help from Erica Janik and Sam Moore. Music by Todd Sikafus. Post-production by Alan Douches. Fact-checking by Sam Moore. Special thanks to Allison Barker for sharing her naked mole rat recordings, which were made at the Max Planck Institute for Brain Research in Frankfurt and at the Lewin Lab, which is part of the Max Delbruck Center for Molecular Medicine in Berlin. Additional thanks to Tim Lammett and Lila Kadani. This show is made by Oracle Productions, a nonprofit organization powered by listener donations. Deneen Weisky is our executive director. You can find out more about our show at thresholdpodcast.org.
Hey friends, we have got another way for you to connect with us here at Threshold. It's our email newsletter. By signing up, you'll stay updated on new episodes of the show and dive deeper into the fascinating sounds you're hearing in our latest season, Hark. From time to time, we'll also share a behind-the-scenes look at how we make the show, plus recommendations from our team on what else we're reading, watching, and listening to. Signing up is easy. Just head over to thresholdpodcast.org or click the link in our show notes. We are so grateful you're part of this community, one that's truly curious about the world around us. And as always, thank you so much for listening.